Here we are in one of the last little patches of old growth forest left in southern Ontario, and this here is an oak tree. This oak would have been tall and strong long before Canada ever had a name as a nation state, and these trees were a source of food for Indigenous peoples, and not only here in North America but over in Europe. There were entire cultures that based a lot of their food sourcing on oaks. So this is one of the forgotten food trees of North America that we can revitalize, that can provide multi-generational food systems. And another thing that people don't understand about oak trees is that when they were removed from the landscape in huge amounts, clear cutting them, using them for various things like ship masts. Some, unfortunately in Ontario, a lot of them were just made into soap. They just thought they were in the way of monoculture farming, and they chopped them all down, burned them, used the ash to make soap. But what happened is that people didn't realize there's a connection between deciduous trees like oak that release a lot of leaves, and the leaves actually create a molecule that goes into the groundwater, goes all the way down the streams and the rivers to the ocean, and fertilizes the foundation of life in the ocean with the iron that it carries there. So they've traced that marine biologists in Japan have traced the molecules from trees like oak trees and other mass trees all the way from the forest in the heartland of the continent to fertilizing the algae blooms, to becoming the small fish that are eaten by salmon, and the food source for salmon. So when you chop down the elder trees, all the deciduous forests, you actually decrease the salmon run. So these are actually important for ocean health as well as salmon health as well. And in a modern context, there's a lot of new cool ideas about how to use the acorns, which you have to leach the tannins out of to eat for most of the varieties. There's an author, Pascal, I believe is his name, and he's a cook who's been experimenting with fermenting acorns, making things like cheeses out of acorns and forest herbs. So you can use fermentation to transform the proteins in these acorns into a really interesting food that's versatile. Now I'm going to read an excerpt from Diana Bedsford Kroger's earlier book, To Speak for the Trees. The oak is the darling of the Celtic world. As I discovered as a child, the peat bogs of Ireland occasionally spit out chunks of oak trees that are pickled in the brine of ages. The open wood grain of the oak darkens with the acids in the bog waters to a gem-like quality. This heavy black bog oak, rich with the scent of centuries, becomes a work of wonder in the hands of a sculptor. The Gaelic name for Irish oak, dair, related to the Greek and Sanskrit forms of the word, managed to elude redaction by the penal laws. The oaks themselves barely survived though, usually hanging on only as specimen trees in Anglo-Irish estates. There is a little patch of forest though, which I'll link below in the description section. Much of the language was not so lucky. During the 500 years of England's rule, the Gaelic language, with its unforgiving pronunciation, solid rules of grammar, and exquisite assonance of pride and poetry, was put to the sword too. But the English found dair easy to say, so that word survived. The Irish oak, once grandstanding in magnificent groves, is the real lus, or healing herb of the Druidic physicians. The oak can live almost 1,000 years, and sometimes longer in rich soil and temperate rainforest conditions of the Garden Isle of Ireland. So Ireland would have had ancient food forests, much like Turtle Island in the past. Oak yields another ancient medicine. In the old age, living oak endures wind effects with its canopy that add to its weight. The wind twists and turns the canopy, inducing a torque in the trunk. A water appears. It was called usit dur, or black water, by the Druidic physicians. It is a mighty molecule, a polymer called gallotannin, still in use today, especially in burn wards. In the past, the oak was a feeding tree for man and beast. Some of the 600 species of this family grow edible acorns. Other acorns have a tannic acid extracted before they are sweet enough to be ground into flour or roasted. This was the basis for an acorn-consuming culture all over the world. You can still find large edible acorns available today in many Arabic and Asian food markets. Botanically, the oak is the king of the plant world. Each tree is a metropolis of insects, butterflies, pollinators, and birds. If you want to learn more about planting oaks in the context of regenerative agroforestry or food forest design, check out the description section where you can find an in-depth article that I published on the species and how you can companion plant it with other excellent tree species like pawpaw and other nut trees so you can create a self-perpetuating multi-generational food system.